Unless you've been living underneath a rock, you might have heard the news that Disney plans to replace the entire Rivers of America with a new Cars Land expansion at the Magic Kingdom. This was announced at D23 just a few days ago and includes filling in the Rivers of America for 2 new rides. The first looks to be some sort of Radiator Springs Racers type of attraction going through the icy mountains, followed by an unnamed family-friendly ride. Personally, I don't really like this decision. Off-road personified cartoon cars have absolutely nothing in common with the Frontier or Americas in the late 18th century. It's already strange enough that there's a densely forested bayou right next to a desert mountain, so the inclusion of an ice mountain in front of the Frontierland buildings is just weird. Not to mention, guests standing in line for the Haunted Mansion will probably hear cars racing by every few seconds. Creative-wise, I don't understand what the Imagineers were trying to do. The placement of this land is weird, out of place, and overall doesn't fit the aesthetic of Frontierland. However, operation and logistics-wise, this was the best and, sadly, one of the only courses of action Disney could have taken. It's a hard pill to swallow, but the only way for the Imagineers to bring Beyond Big Thunder Mountain to life was to destroy the Rivers of America. This might come as a surprise to most of you out there. Most people would probably say, oh, Disney has money. All they need to do is just throw more of it at Beyond Big Thunder and it'll just fix itself. I mean, come on, they built Galaxy's Edge, a 14-acre land in the back of a park with barely enough room to walk. So obviously they can do the same for the Magic Kingdom. Oh, you sweet summer child. Although it may not look like it, both Disneyland and the Magic Kingdom are landlocked, but not in the way you may think. Disneyland is landlocked because of its location at the center of the city of Anaheim, making it extremely hard for the resort to expand outward. The Magic Kingdom, on the other hand, has land they can potentially expand to, however, they have no feasible way of getting guests there. To better explain why, let's pretend we're Disney and build what we originally thought the Imagineers would have done with Beyond Big Thunder, putting Cars and Villains Land behind the Disney World Railroad. To make things a little more simple, we're going to assume that Disney was able to rezone the areas around the back of the Magic Kingdom, and has also received prior permission from the South Florida Water Management District to relocate the large retention pond behind the park. Since the new lands are directly behind the railroad, most people would probably agree that building a pathway from the dead ends of the park to the new Cars and Villains Land would be the best course of action. This would include connecting Thunder Mountain, the Haunted Mansion, and Fantasyland to the new expansion area. Unfortunately, even though this does look like a very easy task, due to logistics and safety, building a pathway from here would be completely impossible. It might not seem like it, but the Magic Kingdom's Rivers of America is actually quite thin in some areas, being only 20 meters or 65 feet wide by Big Thunder Mountain. At a glance, 65 feet seems like more than enough space to build a pathway into a new land, until you consider that the Liberty Belle is around 26 feet wide. Assuming that the Liberty Belle sits directly in the center of the river, it gives us a little less than 20 feet of usable space. However, this does not mean Disney has 20 feet to build a walkway. Firstly, the walkway needs to be appropriately spaced from the Thunder Mountain tracks, as well as the Liberty Belle for safety reasons. With the steady increase of crazy people visiting the Disney World Resort and people jumping into the various bodies of water, I'm pretty sure most of you would agree. Secondly, you would also need basic infrastructure like railings, lights, and trash cans along the path, so in reality, that 20-foot area would amount to maybe a 12-foot wide walkway, which would very obviously be a major bottleneck in terms of guest flow. This is a little over half the width of most other major walkways around the Magic Kingdom. Even if you were to disregard safety entirely and build the pathway to be 20 feet wide, it would still be a major bottleneck since this is the only way guests can get in and out of Cars Land on the west side of the park. Alright, so building a pathway by Big Thunder Mountain Railroad isn't practical. What about the pathway that goes by the Haunted Mansion into Cars and Villains Land? Well, luckily for us, this area is significantly wider than the section of river by Big Thunder Mountain, being about 90 feet at its thinnest. This means we can easily install a significantly larger pathway here. However, those of you who've actually been to the Magic Kingdom's Haunted Mansion might look at this and immediately understand what the problem is. The Haunted Mansion is a very popular attraction, so popular in fact that the lines for both the Standby and Lightning Pass can sometimes extend well past the entrance. Normally this isn't much of an issue since the mansion is secluded in its own corner. However, if you were to, let's say, build a new entrance to a brand new, highly anticipated Villains Land right next to the entrance of a popular attraction, you are not going to have a good time. If there was a burst of lightning passes, if the Haunted Mansion happens to break down, or simply if it's just a more crowded day than usual, the pathway to the Villains Land will end up being clogged by guests trying to get into the Haunted Mansion. Cast members in front of the mansion will permanently be on crowd control duty, similar to what they do at parades, except they're gonna do it for the entire day. This is why attractions are typically built alongside a path as opposed to at the end of one, like the Magic Kingdom's Haunted Mansion. For example, look at the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland. The attraction's entrance is pushed off to the left of the main pathway that feeds into Tiana's Bayou Adventure and Galaxy's Edge. If there was ever an influx of guests or lightning passes in front of the ride, it could very easily be controlled without ever interfering with other guests. This is the unfortunate situation of the Magic Kingdom. It's a park that has basically boxed itself in. The park has a substantial amount of land that it could potentially expand to, however, there is no feasible way of getting guests there. Apart from one area in the back of Fantasyland, there isn't a single place around the rivers of America where you can effectively build a pathway without destroying an existing structure or attraction. Disneyland, on the other hand, is a completely different story. Unlike the Magic Kingdom, where the left side of the river is bottlenecked by Thunder Mountain, Disneyland's same side was unobstructed and used to be one of the widest areas along the rivers of America. When adding Galaxy's Edge, all Disney needed to do was fill in a new pathway with the extra room left by the river. The same logic also applies to the right side of Disneyland's Rivers of America. Ever since the 70s, Disneyland has always had a pathway that took guests around the back of the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad attraction, connecting Frontierland with Fantasyland, appropriately called Big Thunder Mountain Trail. When Disneyland removed a portion of the Rivers of America, Big Thunder Mountain Trail was slightly updated and reused as a new entrance into Galaxy's Edge. This is a stark contrast to the Haunted Mansion in the Magic Kingdom, which does not have any sort of infrastructure past the entrance of the ride. Again, reiterating my point that the Magic Kingdom is naturally locked in by its own design. Alright, so if Big Thunder Mountain and Haunted Mansion are the bottlenecks of the river, what if we bypass this issue by installing Cars Land in the back of the Rivers of America while preserving the Liberty Belle on a small loop? This would sort of work out since it would allow for a larger pathway to be built alongside Big Thunder Mountain. Unfortunately, this change brings up a completely new issue regarding, yet again, the Liberty Belle. The Liberty Belle isn't some cheap gasoline-powered ship. Instead, it is one of the most realistic recreations of a 19th century paddle steamer in the world, with the other two most realistic recreations being in Tokyo Disneyland and Disneyland Park in California. These vessels are made out of real wood and operate off of steam technology from the 1850s, meaning they require a lot of maintenance and upkeep to keep running. In the case of the Liberty Belle, the boat has two maintenance areas, one slightly outside the Rivers of America and the other being found over in Bay Lake. These areas are only accessible by a waterway and lock system behind Big Thunder Mountain, which is significantly farther away than the small loop many people want to see the Liberty Belle sail around. Realistically, it is impossible to remove large parts of the river without affecting the Liberty Belle, and at the same time, it is logistically impractical to build a pathway alongside Big Thunder Mountain Railroad and the Haunted Mansion without shaving the river down. Once again, attempting to keep the river while also trying to expand the park will always lead to some sort of logistical problem. If that wasn't the final nail in the coffin, there's also the issue of the operation cost of the Liberty Belle. This is going to be a bit complicated to explain, so for this example, I'll be using Disneyland's Mark Twain riverboat as a comparison. The Mark Twain riverboat, just like the Liberty Belle, needs constant maintenance to keep running smoothly. However, every 5 or so years, the Mark Twain needs to be brought into dry dock for more intense repairs and maintenance. These things include replacing the rotting wood, disassembling and maintaining the propulsion system, examining the keel, and so on. Again, this is done every 5 or so years. Even though the maintenance is a little expensive, the process for moving the Mark Twain riverboat into Fowler's Harbor is fairly simple, especially compared to the Liberty Belle's complex and long-winded journey. While there is a basic maintenance bay inside of the Magic Kingdom, the actual dry docking facility is found to the right of the park, more than 0.7 miles away from the rivers of America. In order to transport the Liberty Belle to this dry dock, the boat is first guided through a lock similar to the ones found in Panama Canal. This is because the rivers of America in the Magic Kingdom naturally sits higher than the rest of the water in the surrounding lagoon. After the Liberty Belle is lowered down, it is then guided very slowly through a thin waterway and underneath the first set of monorail tracks. The boat then enters the Seven Seas Lagoon and moves very slowly across the water bridge into Bay Lake and then underneath another set of monorail tracks. From there, it takes a left, passing by the abandoned Discovery Island before finally reaching the dry docking facility. This trip is nearly 2.5 miles long and requires the effort of dozens of cast members and engineers working throughout the night. Then, when the dry dock work is finished, they need to do everything all over again, but this time backwards. The process of maintaining and transporting the Liberty Belle during this time is incredibly expensive. I'd be very surprised if this wasn't one of the reasons as to why Disney wanted to remove the river entirely. Overall, these are the logistical challenges Disney faces to build beyond Big Thunder Mountain. Remember, this does not include zoning set in place by Ridley Creek, nor the permissions to relocate various retention ponds around the park. The process of building anything beyond the river is simply impossible, given the natural restrictions created by the Haunted Mansion and Thunder Mountain. If I had it my way, I would have built Cars and Villains Land in Hollywood Studio, adding additional capacity and preserving the natural beauty of Frontierland for future generations. Unfortunately, if you were to build an expansion beyond Big Thunder Mountain, while also creating a feasible way to transport guests there, there is no other option but to unfortunately remove the rivers of America.